All right, so first of all, I just want to thank all of you for coming. You must be bored out of your minds to choose to do this instead of watching a movie or something else. So we're going to talk about portfolios, professional photographic portfolios tonight. If you have questions, just go to the bottom of your screen and put in a chat there. You can ask the questions. I'll try to look at them every so often and respond, but we'll see how that goes. It may not show up exactly as we planned, but we'll give it a try. This is informal, so if you have questions, please do so. If you can always contact me afterward. You all know how to get in touch with me. You can go to my website, lesterpickerphoto.com, and you can reach me through there if you don't already have my email. So obviously we all think we know what a photographic portfolio is, but the thing is that I want to ask is, do we really understand what a portfolio is? Because if you think that it's just the final product that you end up with, I'm going to suggest that you're pretty sorely mistaken. There are many more important, there's at least one very much more important thing involved in a portfolio that is really the result of all the work you put in. So it's not just the physical portfolio that you end up with. So doing a portfolio, it's a long and difficult process. Unfortunately, if you look at the portfolio alone as the final product, it's sort of like the tail wagging the dog. It's actually not always to your best advantage to think of it as the final product. So let's move on and jump into it. I'll just tell you, those of you who know me and our studio know Bob's been with me for over a decade. We've been doing fine art portfolios separately until we began working together for decades. And in the last 10 years, we've done many workshops, 3-day portfolio development workshops. And that is, our next one, by the way, is November 6th, the 6th, 7th, and 8th, to really, and it has a preliminary work that you have to do for it. So that's the story. You all know my background. I've been a contract photographer for National Geographic. I teach workshops locally. I also lead trips internationally. I'm a Moab master, X-Rite Colorati, and Bob is a master printer as well as a well-regarded studio photographer. So I give you that background so that you'll know what you're getting into as I give you my comments. And Bob is listening in at home, so he may chime in also. So the first question is, what is a portfolio? Obviously, if you look it up, you get a definition sort of something like this: concise collection created to show people your best work. So I want to emphasize two things before we go any further. The word concise and best work. You've got two important elements here that you really need to keep in mind. Portfolios that are voluminous tend to not work nearly as well as concise collections of images. So its purposes, what are they? And this will be the first time that I'll offer this, but it'll be, we'll have other opportunities here to reinforce what I'm saying in this first slide. Obviously, and I think this is important, it enhances your own pride in your work and to derive pleasure. It gives you a chance to really see your work in a different light, not just on your screen, but actually printed. So you can derive some pleasure from that element of it. It's also a home decor showpiece. We often don't think about that, but a nice portfolio on a coffee table or on a desk really does a lot to enhance your home and also bring your passion to bear. A great way to showcase your work to family and friends, obviously. And for those of you who are looking more to advance your work, it's really a good way to secure editorial assignments and book contracts. I'm going to give you examples of that as we go on. And by the way, at the end of this presentation, I'm going to actually show you finished portfolios, or an assortment of finished portfolios, to give you an idea of the broad range of ways to create portfolios, how they look after they're created. So securing editorial assignments, book contracts, and I left out here, but also clients. I'm thinking of Katie, who does these marvelous photography of families, of people and kids in particular is her forte. So, having a portfolio to show potential clients is really a great way to go. And also, of course, if you're thinking of having a gallery exhibit, this is a portfolio is a great way to get into a gallerist and show him or her your body of work, or represented in your portfolio, and then begin discussions as to whether you want to be part of an exhibit or actually have a solo exhibit. All right. Why portfolios? In some senses, it'll be repetitive, but only because I had to include it to make this comprehensive. It's a great way to pause and assess your body of work. Many of us have been photographing at 10, 20, 30, 40 or more years. And if you haven't put a portfolio together, this is a wonderful way to sit back and really assess where you've come from, what your body of work is like, and then use that to chart your future direction. Now, I'm going to tell you as a personal example. Several years ago, I was at a juncture in my photography after having been in it for many, many years. And after assessing my body of work and developing, actually I have more than one portfolio I use for different purposes, but I was assessing where I was to develop in developing a portfolio. And I realized, I don't want to be pressing the shutter at 10 frames a second anymore and shooting the way I always had. I've been using Nikon for 50 years. And I decided to chart my future direction is going to be in the area of medium format photography. I've used Hasselblad digital, and now I've settled on Fuji medium format. But this process gave me a chance to chart my future direction, to slow my photography down, and to make it much more deliberative and mindful. Now, remember I said the purpose of the portfolio is not the end product necessarily. What is the main outcome of a portfolio? To me and to Bob, I must say, it's really learning how to self-edit. Folks, self-editing is the most difficult part of photography. All the basics you get down, you know your camera, you know your techniques, et cetera, but we are all terrible at editing our own images. And I don't mean post-processing, but I mean in terms of selecting a portfolio to really make decisions as to what should go into a portfolio, and I'll be talking to you about that in a minute. Self-editing is a process that takes time, and learning how to select images, cull images, post-process images, sequence images, all of that. Pairing images on the same page or on opposing pages, very difficult. That's the key thing that you get out of creating a portfolio. It also really helps to work collaboratively. And I'm going to talk more about this in future slides here, but I want to say this. Invariably, people who come to us for help with their portfolios, if they've worked alone, their portfolios do not rise to the level of people who work collaboratively on their portfolios. I must tell you that. There are reasons for it. We'll get into it. But working collaboratively is important. I'm going to suggest how you might do that in a couple of slides from now. It's a great way to advance your art, as I explained to you, to share your art. And one that's often left out, and I really want to say this, is, we all have this passion for photography, and we're so immersed in it, pruning the trees, that we never get to see the forest. Doing a portfolio is an opportunity to really celebrate that passion, to give you a chance to see that forest, to make decisions that will help you and others understand what you're about, what you've accomplished, and in essence, where you're going. So let me start with some thoughts, then we'll get into specifics in a minute. It's a process. If you think you can do this in a week, you are going to create a portfolio that is not going to be to truly represent your best work, to get you to rise to the level of the best that you can possibly do and show to other people. Most important, again, I'm going to emphasize this, the self-editing. These are some of the thoughts I want to share with you. And they come from really Bob and I working jointly on this. Excuse me. Finished product, as I said, is secondary. I put that in quotes. It really isn't secondary, but it is secondary to the learning how to self-edit. Okay, how do we get started on this? First thing is, as with anything worthwhile, you have to start with your vision, with your concept of what you'd like this portfolio to be and what you would like it essentially to look like. So what does that involve? The first thing you have to ask is, what's your portfolio about? What are the goals of the portfolio? If you came to me and said, Les, help me with the portfolio, I would ask you, what are your goals? How do you intend to use it? Oh, I want to become a photojournalist with a newspaper. Fine. That's a different kind of a goal. I would steer you in a certain direction, or help you to examine a different direction, as opposed to saying, well, I'm trying to use this as something to sell my work to clients, right? Different goals entirely. So what is one of your goals, let's say, to gauge your own artistic accomplishments? In essence, and we have this happen often in our workshops over the last 10 years, is people will come in and say, I just want it for myself. I want to create a portfolio so I can see what I do, and in essence, set a stake down, set a marker down right now, and knowing that at age 30, at age 40, here's where I am with my photography. Instead of looking through, 40,000, literally 40, 50, 100,000 images on your computer screen, there's a great way to set that marker and say, here's who I am, here's where I am, this is my passion for photography at this point in my life, in my career. Or is it a coffee table book? That's fine too. There's no problem with that. If that's what your intent is, go for it. Is it for editor-publisher meetings? Is it to get, like I said before, for gallery? Each of these goals will give you direction for your portfolio, obviously. And by the way, you don't have to do just one portfolio. I've got several of them. Many of our clients have multiple portfolios they use for different purposes. Okay, so what are the steps? Next steps now is, what is your focus? Most people, I shouldn't say most, maybe 30%, 40% of people who come to our workshops or who come to us for private individual help on a portfolio will say, their thinking is, I want to make a portfolio of my best 10 to 20 best images. I'm here to tell you that may not be the best way to go. I'm not saying not to, but if you'll hear me out, I think you will understand why I say just doing the 10 top images or my 20 best images actually may not serve your purposes. So what would work? Well, have you worked on a project or a story at all? Is there something that you have followed for years and years, or a place you've gone back to repeatedly in different seasons, different weather patterns? Think about that as a portfolio. Are you documenting something? I have a colleague who did a portfolio because he lives in Amish country and he has spent 20 years, he never even thought to do this, but 20 years he's been going to Amish church services or standing from the outside, seen kids playing. He's been accepted by farmers, so he has farm scenes, etc. If you're documenting something like that, that makes a wonderful portfolio. It's very focused, concise, and it tells a story. I often get people saying, okay, I'd like to do something. I go to Africa. I've been there several times. I want to do one on African wildlife. Okay, that might be nice, seeing, what I call elephant 101 or a lion 101. I have my continents mixed up here. Lion 101 or zebras. That's good. Okay, that's fine. But wouldn't it be better to focus a portfolio and do something like the elephants of the Serengeti? Tell their story, show them herding, show mothers and calves, show perhaps an elephant that was killed by a poacher, show their predators. Tell a story, sequence it so you're really telling their story. Those kinds of portfolios really work, are most powerful and work best. Cohesion, that cohesion of images throughout the portfolio, 10, 15, 20 images, tends to be much more powerful, much more dynamic than just a selection of 10 or 20 of your best images. Plus, you're asking the viewer something very difficult, and that is to switch their mindset from an image of, let's say, of a macro scene, which is a great image, mind you, to an image of a wildlife, to an image of a landscape, to this or that, right? That's very jarring to the viewer. If you tell a story through your portfolio, it's much better. Oh, or it could be my trip to China. It could be whatever it is. Cohesion tends to be more powerful. Continue with the nitty-gritty. Are there any questions? I'm not seeing them on my screen here, but I'll just move on and take them at the end then. So we talked about taking time. I mean, obviously, this kind of a process, if you have any kind of body of work, 10,000 or more slides, images rather, it's going to take you a while to make decisions on what goes in there. Portfolios work best with fewer than 25 prints. Please, please keep this in mind. Unlike iPhones or iPads where someone can quickly just 2.3 seconds. That's the average time people spend on an iPhone with an image, 2.3 seconds. This is not true with portfolios. People are having a physical interaction with the prints. And if you use good paper, there's also a sensuality to looking at these prints. So they're going to look at the prints, and 25 is a lot to ask for people to be looking at. So if you can make your story very focused, very cohesive, and you can do it in 10, 12, 15 prints, it's a much more powerful experience for the viewer too. You want to leave them asking for more, not stopping at number 18 when you have 25 prints and say, oh, these are really nice. You get my point. All right, so now we get to that thing I was talking about, working collaboratively. We believe, and this is borne out by our experience with many, many people, many different genres of photography, it's important to develop a number of collegial relationships. This is crucial. So how does this happen? And it doesn't have to be photographers only, by the way. If you know someone who has a really good artistic sense, it might be an art critic. It might be, let me just see, hold on here, all right. It might be, but we suggest find some colleague photographers or others, a painter, someone who's a fine art painter who also has a sense of the kinds of things you're looking for, color perhaps, or composition or whatever. put together a group and say, how would you like to work together? Does this work with you? Make sure you respect the other person's photography, right? So it's important to pre-identify the kinds of people that you would like to work with. We recommend you keep that number to 4, no more than 4. Beyond that, it gets to be too much. Too fewer than 4, it becomes difficult to get the kinds of critiques and inputs that you need. So we find 4 to be sort of a magical number, yourself plus 3 others, working together, helping each other, understanding each other. So what do you do there? What you do is you share your vision with them and listen and understand theirs. Get to know each other's photography. Where have they come from? Where do they see themselves now? Where do they think they might be going, right? So share that vision. Once that's done and they understand where you're going, what your goals are for the portfolio, select 40 to 50 of your top candidates. You know your story. It's going to be about, what is it I want to say? First responders in this time of COVID-19. First responders. Select 40 to 50 of your top candidates. Things that are dynamic, that are well composed, that are well focused, not blurry or whatever, unless it's intentional. And get your 40 or 50 top candidates and share them with your group. Ask them for feedback. This is not, I want to get clear what feedback is. This is not feedback, oh, you used the wrong camera or you should have used this light. We're not talking about that. We assume that you have chosen images that you really feel are pretty darn good and could be representative in your portfolio. What you want from them is the content appropriate of each of these images? Is there drama enough in there to sustain interest? What about the design of it, the sequencing of the images? If I take these, will I have a sequence that tells the story that I'm looking for? These, I have to say, in our workshops, and we limit our portfolio workshop, by the way, to 4 people, plus Bob and I. Invariable, what they say is that discussion was the highlight of basically their photography, if not specifically for the portfolio. That they really enjoy the high level of discussion that takes place in this kind of an environment. You're serious photographers. You're looking to develop the best portfolio you can. You're helping each other. Listen to what they say. This is not a time to defend yourself. He who talks, if you talk first, you lost. What you want to do is listen, ask questions. Why do you feel that doesn't work? What would you suggest? Am I missing something here? Listen. This is the important thing. Listen. Don't talk, except when you're doing feedback for other people, but ask questions, listen to what they're saying. Once that's done, and you understand what their critique is, don't forget, this is your portfolio. They're giving feedback. That isn't gospel. You have to make the final decision. But go back now and cull those 50 to 30. Okay? Cull that to 30. And then go back to the group and say, here's where I am. Here's where I was. Here's where I am. Bring the ones that you did cull with you, by the way, in case they remember, oh, this one might go better with your story. Go back to them, ask them you're on the right track, get their feedback. And this is not a 15-minute discussion, folks. You're going to be there for a couple of hours on each session with them. And then cull it again. After that, by 5 to 15 images, right? So you came in with 30. Now you're down to 25, 20, 15 images, depending on the size of the portfolio you envision. And like I said before, fewer is better. Now you're at a very, very, very special point now. And that is, we recommend that you print small versions of those final 15, 20 images, right? Best to do it on 8.5 by 11 paper with a border, but a white border, I might add. But some people do it 2 per page. So you have 5.5 by, what do you have? What's that? 5.5 by 8, right? 5.5 by 8.5 images on a page. You just cut them, make sure they're separate. But if you have enough paper, you have enough ink, you're not really worried about it, print them on 8.5 by 11s. Spread them out on a table or a floor, right? Spread them out. Play with the sequencing and the design. I'm going to show you examples of this in just a moment or two. Play with the sequencing. Sequencing is important because that's what tells your story, right? Play with the design of it. Make sure if you have 2 images that are going to be on one page that they make sense with each other, unless your intent, by the way, is to produce what we call cognitive dissonance. You want to really rattle the viewer's brain because the people you're going to be showing this portfolio to are people who look for that. Let's say you're for a magazine that's really sort of way out there. You may want to do something that might be a little dissonant. But in general, tell your story by playing with the sequencing and design. Move those pictures, those prints around until you get a flow that you really think works. One thing we have to tell you is you've got to be judicious with horizontal and vertical images. We have found the most successful, I shouldn't say that, but typically you would want either all horizontal or all vertical, or if you're doing horizontals and there are 2 verticals that you want in that mix of 15 or 20 or 4 verticals that you want, what you do is you put 2 perhaps on one page. So people don't have, the worst thing that you ever want people to do is have to take your portfolio, you know, when they're looking at it and turn it sideways or some which way, right? So don't, so be very judicious when you in introducing vertical images to a horizontal portfolio or vice versa. Once you're done with that, let it sit for a week or more. We recommend more, and then go back and reassess. Go back and reassess. Let it sit for another week. Go back and reassess and play with the images. Ask some others how they feel about it, and then go back to your group and ask them the question, does this achieve the goals that I set out? Okay? Finally, for this slide, I want to tell you this. There's no excuse for mediocrity in a portfolio. You have got to make sure, folks, this is you. This is your art that you're asking people to view. You have to expect that they're going to look for it. They have this in their hand. They're not just swiping it on the screen. Commit to excellence. You want to make sure you use the best papers you can for your particular images. Don't mix papers, by the way. Use the same paper throughout. You want to make sure that everything is that needs to be in tack sharp focus is in tack sharp focus. I've got a colleague who I don't understand, but he tends to not see that things are out of focus in his images. He's improving in that, but you know, make sure that everything that should be in focus is in focus, and because that's terribly distracting, right? Okay, so let me end with a couple of quotes here before I show you some portfolios, and I'll get out of here so I can take your questions. I worked for many years with a man by the name of Clay Scheinfeld at the University of Wisconsin, who was a famous environmental editor, and he said, the greatest passion on earth is neither love nor hate, but rather editing another person's work. I love that quote because we can, you know, we get very passionate about giving critique and feedback to someone else, but done correctly, it really does work. And we couldn't find the citation for this, Bob and I, but we both recall having seen it, that every great photographer has either been a great editor or had a great editor. right? I forget. So if any of you know who said that, I would love to hear it from you. Okay, you got it, Rob? All right. So what I'd like to do is show you some presentation options, a variety of portfolios, starting from the simplest to more, I don't know what to say, to more advanced kinds of portfolios. And so let me do that. And all right, now, am I coming on full screen now, Rob? Yep, okay, good. So it's gonna take me a second because I have to rearrange some furniture to do this. Okay.
Les, you're still on shared screen.
I'm still on shared screen. Oh, I'm sorry. Got it. Yeah, I forgot to do that. There we go. Am I off? I'm okay now. Full screen. Thank you. All right. So, yeah. So here we are. Let me just turn this down a bit so you can see this pretty more clearly. All right. Let's start with the simplest, as I said, the simplest of the portfolios. This is, and you're going to ask me where do I get these? Trust me, go online and put in photography portfolios. Don't put it in portfolios. It's got to say photography. Then go to images, and you'll see hundreds of different kinds of portfolios, different types, different materials that you can use. This is a portfolio that that is very, very simple, but very, very nice to use. You can see here, this is, can you see that, Rob? You're seeing it, thank you. Okay, so this is a very simple paper made out of heavy duty paper, okay? And it flips up like this, and it holds, 10 to 15 images, right? Let me see if I can get that a little bit lower. Is that better? Okay. And when you open it up, on the back side, by the way, you can include an image from the portfolio, back, flipped, showing it through this window. And then on the front here, this is one that I did. It's called Canadian Landscapes, right? And on the back, I did this in 2012. On the back is the story that I'm trying to tell. Then there's a sheet here that explains the portfolio, where it was taken, and it was done, what paper it was done on. And then it's just a simple idea of 8.5 by 11 paper with a 6 by 9 inch image, right? And it goes step by step, just, images of Canada landscapes taken in different places in Canada. Some of you know, just not I don't want to say too much about it, but the fact is that I spend a lot of time in Canada photographing, and so you have a nice portfolio like that. It's easy to carry around. It folds nicely, looks good, real simple. You could have multiples of these for every vacation you take, for specific things that you're looking to show people. And it comes in different colors too, right? It comes in gray thing. I've seen it in red. We don't have any here, but the other colors. But here's 3 basic colors that you can use. All right, so questions. Let me go to some questions now, because we've got a bunch here. All right, we have a warning from Katie about her toddlers. Thanks, Katie. Let's see. Okay, so here's a good question. I have a web page where I have different focus galleries, but I don't think of those as portfolios. What is the distinction? So John, two things come to mind on this one. Number one is that a portfolio is something that you hold in your hand. A gallery on your computer is something different. So they have different purposes. And I have to say that if your intent, by the way, is to get an editorial assignment, and I've photographed from many magazines, Forbes, Fortune, Better Homes and Gardens, a bunch of others. If you want to land that, everyone sends in things by email, images, go to this site or that site to see my images. But if you can land an appointment with an editor and actually show them your work, it makes the world a difference. So that, John, I hope answers your question. We're talking about paper versus and so on. Okay, so let's move on, and I'll take some other questions as we go along. That's one kind of portfolio. Another portfolio, again, along the lines of being somewhat simple, but still, but a little bit, it looks better, let's say, than the one I just showed you, is this kind of a portfolio. It's known as a Chinle, C-H-I-N-L-E, a Chinle portfolio. It's sold by Moab. I have to tell you, in full disclosure, I'm sponsored by Moab, our studio is, and I use their papers. This is sold by Moab, but it's just a good solution. And I've seen other ones on the web similar to it, so you don't only have to think of Moab with this. But this is a much larger presentation, right? This is one that I did on Antarctica. So once you open it up, and it's, again, simple, it's magnetic here. So it keeps everything in, simple. When you open it, can you see this, Rob? Am I being able to see it? Okay. So here are a selection of images, right? And this is, and there are, I believe, 10 images here that represent this portfolio of Antarctica that I took all black and white. And that's something else, by the way, when you do a portfolio, it's either color or black and white. Now you can mix it, but it's very, very difficult to do. So here's one here. Let's see. How often do you update your portfolio? Okay, I like that. When I do my portfolio, folks, it represents a point in time for me, and I leave it that way. However, if I were to say, okay, I'm going to go speak to this editor about my Canada work, some of my work was taken with 12 megapixel cameras or 10 megapixel cameras 15 years ago, and I might have better images now. So what I would do in that case is I probably would update it for that purpose. And what I typically do in that situation is reprint the ones that in other words, leave that original portfolio as is, and then just reprint the ones that I consider better, and then go that route. Okay, so I hope it answers that question. All right, let me get to another question after the next portfolio. All right, so here's a portfolio. This one is known. Change this again, aspect ratio thing. This is known as a Flint, F-L-I-N-T, a Flint portfolio. It is sold by Moab, but the company that makes it makes tons of different styles in it. Wood. This one is some composite compound, not plastic. It's I think, I don't know exactly what it is, but anyway, it's rigid and it's black, but they make wood. One's made out of wood, one's made out of aluminum, all sorts of things. It's a beautiful presentation. It looks simple on the outside, but what it does is it allows you, when you open it up, this is also Antarctic portfolio. I'm trying to get it so it does. This is not meant to be held up, by the way. It's meant, so there's nothing protecting the paper. So I have double sprayed this with Moab desert spray, which we use in our studio. And so, because I know it's going to be handled a lot. So I have double sprayed it to make sure to keep fingerprints off it. But as you go into it, here's a double spread of images. Now I'm going to violate my own rule of mixing color and black and white. I'm going to show you why. So now you open up, these are two single images, and you open up to a pano of a scene in Antarctica. Can you all see that? I need your thumb up, Rob, if you can see it. Got it? Okay. So you have a double spread. Now this has a wonderful binding that uses a tape that's basically invisible, but whatever. So it's an alternating piece where you have two black and whites, followed by a color image, which is a pano, and then again black and whites. Now, I want to show you something about sequencing in a moment. Let me just get. This is hard to do, standing on top of it and trying to separate this. I apologize for that, but okay. So there is another pano, and then another black and white. All right, and then I end with this shot, which I took. I was camping on an island in the Antarctic, and this is taken at 3 a.m. 3 o'clock in the morning. It's still that bright, 24-hour sunshine. And then this ship just happened to come into view. It's a Norwegian research ship, and it just sailed into this harbor at 3 o'clock in the morning where I was camping. So I was able to grab that shot. And then an end piece, here. Now, what I wanted to point out to you, let me get to it quickly in terms of sequencing. If I can find it here. Yeah. So when we were sequencing this, we had to make some decisions. And I want to give you an example. By spreading out our 8x10s, we could see that this flow, see the way the light is flowing here, the cloud structure, we knew this had to be on this side of the portfolio. And it flows right into this image. So sequencing that I talked about is really quite important in this whole thing. You have to, the sequencing. Let me take a question. I'll take you something. I'll show you the next portfolio. What print size do you recommend for portfolios? Would you recommend printing at home or sending images to a lab for final prints? Okay, so the size will depend entirely on what you prefer and what the usage is intended to be. If you're going to go to a gallery to try to get a placement in a gallery, I would use 13x19s, the larger sizes. I wouldn't go much larger than that, by the way. They become unwieldy. But if your intent is to just have it as show a family vacation or whatever, it's fine to use 8.5x11. And I'm going to show you that very next. The very next thing I'm going to show you will be the two portfolios, actually, yeah, two or three portfolios that use the same materials, but one's 13x19 and one is 8.5x11. So let's take a look at that. So this is the portfolio that we do in our workshop. So everyone who leaves our 3-day workshop goes home with this. This is made out of wood. There's no fiberboard. This is actually wood. It's covered with material, and it's the only place in the U.S. that still does this handmade. So we have a deep well. We have a well cut in it, and where we take one of the images from your portfolio and then put it here in this well. And let me just turn this once again so I can open it. Good. So this opens up, this portfolio. Okay, you can all see it here. And it comes with a pair of gloves because we encourage people to use that when they're looking at it with a very, with good quality papers. And there's a ribbon here, to dress it up. Again, you want your portfolio to really represent you in the best way possible. So this is the same portfolio that I showed you before, but updated. The other one was 2012. This is 2016. And it's my Canada portfolio. It's called Canada Landscapes, right? And what Bob has gone and done is something that is amazing. Here, each print, and here's an example. Here's one of the prints. This is 13 by 19 paper. Each print, I'm not using gloves because these have been sprayed, again, double sprayed, because I use this as a demo a lot. So, but what Bob has done is he's created a vellum sheet which goes on top, and it can only fit the print that it's designed for. So this is called Autumn Reflections. It was taken in Alberta, Canada. And if you can see it, it is graded from almost full down to nothing. So it fits right, it's the exact same image. It fits perfectly over here, and it protects the image, and it really dresses up the whole presentation, as you can see. So if you look at it here, this is the presentation. There are 12 images here on really high quality Moab Entrada textured, which is 305 GSM. It's a very heavy paper, and that's what we like for this. It's a good heavy paper. Now, let me just tell you that we had the former. Let me just sit down for a minute, and then I'll continue with the. Other ones, but we had the former CFO of Ford North America, supervising 375 people. He was due to retire. He took our workshop, and he wanted to get into photography for magazines. He took his portfolio. The very first editor he met with gave him his very first assignment. So he was prepared as soon as he left work with the very first assignment. On the other hand, we have had people, we have another one of our clients took his portfolio. His goal in life was to, in photographic life anyway, it was to have a gallery exhibit, a solo gallery exhibit, but he knew that he would have to start small, maybe just have 2 or 3 of his prints in a gallery. So what happened was he went to this very prominent gallery in New Hampshire, and the woman took a look at it and gave him a solo exhibit. Beautiful, beautiful exhibit. I went up to see it, and he was very successful, by the way, in selling his prints, but the portfolio is what got him in. You can produce it in 8.5 by 11 also, very simply. So it's the same structure, same materials, and opens up in a similar way, and it's just 8.5 by 11 instead. We have one client who I will tell you, I know that Steve knows him, Steve Sattler knows him, Lou Rothman, a retired radiologist from New York City. He has spent 60 years photographing in New York. Wonderful work. You know, we have the title of the thing on the binding here. He does exquisite work. He took this in, and he now has his first book out as a result of this. The publisher loved his work, and now this is New York architecture. It's called New York Abstractions, and just spectacular work by Lou. So he has his first book, and the second one is being developed right now as I'm presenting this. He's in the middle of doing another book. Again, so this would be a more high-end, if you will, presentation of a portfolio. And look, we have people who will end up doing one of these for each of their family trips. Isn't that a wonderful thing? They have it on their bookshelves. It fits beautifully on a bookshelf. And then they, so think about that. I mean, you can do the same thing. You may not want to do something like this with handmade, but there are lots of portfolio boxes out there that are being sold, different colors, different textures, and different even materials. Like some of them are wood or aluminum. And then you can do your portfolios, using that. So there are super many options available today, and that all, I think that all works. So once again, let me just mention to you that if you're interested, you can contact us. Our next portfolio workshop is November 6th, 7th, and 8th. They start at 3 p.m. on Friday and end about 5 p.m. on Sunday. Very intense, and you have to, we start this collegial process about 2 months before that. So you would need to send us images, well in advance. All right, now let me get some questions. Let's see. Okay, so here's Jerry asks, PSA has portfolio groupings of 10 to 15 and 20. What is the best portfolio size? PSA also recommends a theme, yes or no? Can a portfolio have no theme or story? In other words, be eclectic? Absolutely, that can happen, that can be. Themes tend to work best, but again, not necessarily. It could be just 10 assorted images. It could be quite eclectic, but then the question is, what's the purpose of it? What are you trying to show? What are your goals in it? We tend to not like to think about doing things for other people to get their approval, but rather to make a statement on your own. This is where I am at this point. This is the story I want to tell. So this best portfolio size, as I said, stick with traditional paper sizes. They tend to work best. So I would recommend 8.5 by 11. Smaller than that, it's not a very impressive portfolio. It just doesn't work at a smaller size. So 8.5 by 11, 13 by 19 works great. Once you get into 17 by 22, it tends to be too large to adequately handle, because that's a big size paper, 17 by 22. Question. I have images I would consider for a portfolio that go back 15 years. Lots of luck. How would you like to? My portfolio goes back 50. Some are JPEGs and from a 10 megapixel camera. I know that well. My question is, what should we look for in an image that are well suited to be printed for a portfolio? Good question. Don't forget that image that looks great on in a thumbnail. Once you start blowing it up, 8.5 by 11, even iPhone photos can look pretty good. The new iPhones, that is. But I shouldn't say. I mean smartphones. But the thing is that once you start going up to 13 by 19, if there are imperfections in your images, they're going to show a little bit more than they would on an 8.5 by 11, for example. So you have to be careful of that. You want to make sure that what's well suited, crisp, clear images that don't look blurred or whatever. Make sure they're well cropped. If there are extraneous branches or things that are distracting, there's typical things that go into composition. If it's a well-composed image, critically sharp where it needs to be sharp, then that would work. So lighting is important. If you're a studio photographer, you're doing a portfolio on nudes, or you're doing a portfolio on fashion, lighting is going to be critical. So you want to look professional and do what you, like I said, excellence. Aim for excellence. Another question. Katie, I love your comment here. Every one of your pictures of your kids is perfect, because your kids are just too sweet to believe. So I agree with you about that. But you have to, but if for potential clients, then you really need that to choose images that people really, really want. That will identify with, they'll really like. So I would even tailor my portfolio, by the way. I would have 2 or 3 ready portfolios, one for people who have older kids, one for younger kids, and one maybe even for infants, newborns, because that's a whole genre in itself. And then just, and if it includes some of your kids, that's fine. They don't have to know that, at least not initially. But, just get your best work there in its best light. And that's really the way to, that's my personal recommendation for it. Okay, any other questions? I think I've covered them. How do you like that? An hour on the button. Okay, so what do? I return it to you?
Yeah, is there any other questions for Les? Let me go ahead and unmute everybody. Everybody is unmuted who wants to be unmuted.
I can't hear that.
I'm going to mute myself because I hear my kids.
Oh, there you go. See, now who's that cute baby behind you that's on the wall there?
That was unintentional, but yeah, you helped me pick this one, and that one did all right. Yeah.
Yeah. She's so adorable.
Thank you.
All right. When do you do?
12 days.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
Good luck on that.
It's a good time to have a baby right now.
No, it's not. But you'll do well. You do. Think positive.
Yeah, I'm glad it's my 3rd kid and not my first one, or I'd be.
That's right. You're right. Well, I hope you have an easy time with it, honestly, and you have a healthy baby, and you're healthy, and everybody's good.
Thanks.
Please just don't name the baby Quarantine.
I kept joking to my husband that we should call her Corona.
That's right.
I have read that people have done that already.
Yeah, no way, really? Sure.
Yeah. The twins, Corona and COVID.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Somebody actually did that? Oh, wow. Yeah.
Oh, my God. All right.
Inflicted it twice.
Other questions? Ann, do you have a question?
Les, I'd like to know, is there any kind of way that a digital portfolio can be done? I understand you print.
Yes, of course. You can, in essence, that's the question that was asked about a gallery. In essence, it's a gallery that you're going to produce. A digital portfolio is essentially a gallery. And there are times when an editor will call me and say, can you just send me some images? And I know that they're not going to take prints because of the time element or something like that. So I will send them to one of my galleries or to a custom-made gallery that I'll put together for them.
The PSA does have a specific process for doing a portfolio that's involved like yours is, but the end result is, of course, on the PSA website.
Absolutely. Absolutely. But, the thing is that, let's say you're going for gallery work in particular, then you really have to have hard copy prints, because they can judge from digital what it's going to look like on, and what their clients are going to like. Because so much of it has to do with paper choice. So much of it has to do with, with the aesthetics of it. So in that case, I would recommend not even doing 8.5 by 11. I wouldn't walk into a gallery with 8.5 by 11. I would walk in with a 13 by 19. Yeah. Anyone else? And you're all, any of you, once this COVID thing is over, are welcome to come to the gallery and just look around and